Scope of variable in C++. Scope is a part of the code from where variable, object, function, etc. are visible. I will use this editor to explain it further. First, I will talk block scope. Block scope is related to code block, which is delimited by curly braces. Everything that is placed within this two curly braces is belongs to this block code. It can have a variable definition. It can have a function invocation. Something like this. For this, I need to have a function which let's say returns a data. It takes two integer type arguments. Returns the summation. This is a function invocation. I want to set this to another variable. It may contain object creation or the instantiation of a type. Suppose I have a struct of struct name my struct, then I could create an object of this type. My struct would be defined something like this. Content 1, content 2, and this block scope may also contain if else statement, switch statement. It may also contain a loop, and so on and so forth. It can also use a variable from the broader scope, the scope which actually contains this block scope. For example, A is a variable that comes from the broader scope. Then you can use it in the block scope. Block scope may also have another block nested within it, and that nested block may have its own variable definition, function invocation, and other things. Now, a name that is in the narrower scope is not accessible outside it. The scope of this m variable begins at the point when it is defined, and it remains until the closing curly brace. So if I try to access m here, it will be incorrect. This will be error. And if I try to access this even m and x from this place, this will be an error. I'm gonna go ahead and compile this code. This is my compilation command. Main.cpp is source file name. This is output file name. Compiler selection, and the option for warning display. This should compile. I might not have saved. I have actually, let me save it and compile it again. Now you can see these errors. M was we actually tried to access M from outside the block scope, so it was error, and we also tried to access X outside the scope, so that was also error. So this is error, and if I, let's say, comment this out, we don't have anything to display here. It will just if I compile this, it will just compile and will not display anything. But if it compiles, then we can assume that it is there is no problem with the code. So I have only warning. I would ignore that warning because the variables that are defined have not been used. If I remove this thing, the warning will go away. So I didn't have warning now. So this is about the block scope. Now I will talk about function scope a little bit. To talk function scope, let me switch back to the editor and clean this up a little bit. Function scope is the everything that is inside this curly braces, but that block, this is a code block, it has to be attached to the signature line of the function. That means sometimes it's also called as first line of the function. Suppose I have a function which actually computes the summation of an array and returns it, and suppose it receives an array and its size. And then to compute the summation, first you need to define a summation variable and set it to 0, and you iterate in a loop and you actually keep accumulating the array content into the sum variable, and finally you can return sum. This will actually return the summation of the elements of the array that comes in this pointer. Now this is the function scope, and the variables that are defined inside the scope are accessible within the scope. They are not accessible outside the scope, and even these parameters are also accessible within the scope. Therefore this parameter also have function scope. Sometimes you may have block scopes placed inside the function scope, or you can also have the other, like in this case we have a loop here. You can have loop, if else statement, and so on in the inside the function scope as well. And one term that may sometimes confuse you is scope of a function. When we say scope of a function, it means that the place in the code from where a function is accessible. So it is different from function scope. Function scope is this scope defined by this curly braces which is attached to the signature line of the function. But scope of the function is the scope, the place in the code from where it is accessible. That means we can this is a function defined in this place, so it is accessible from everywhere in the program. So that is entire program is the scope of, I mean, scope from where this function is accessible. Now let me talk namespace scope. For that, let me clean this up again. Namespace scope is it is a code block associated with a namespace definition. If you don't know about namespace, please watch one of my previous videos where I have explained namespace in detail. You can define namespace using this syntax. Inside this namespace, this curly braces actually define the scope for this namespace. This is the beginning of the scope, and this is the end of the scope. Inside namespace, you can have variables, you can have a function, you can have another function, and it can also contain definition of custom types such as struct or class. And it can also contain a definition of object of this struct. So there are different things that you can have in the namespace scope. To use this code, let me skip that uses part, but just I want to define the, I mean, explain this namespace scope. So the scope that is attached to the namespace definition or associated with namespace definition is a namespace scope. And if you want to know more detail about this, please watch the namespace related video. Now I will be talking global scope. Let me clean this up, remove. Global scope is, it is a parent scope of all the scopes. That means you can imagine there is one scope which contains everything else. I mean, namespace, function, and this main function, everything. So that is what is called global scope. And it is the scope outside all the narrow scopes, as I told you earlier. Namespace, function, block, these are scope, they have narrow, I mean, they are narrow in nature. But if you go outside all the narrow scope, for example, this main is narrow scope. If you have a namespace, this is a narrow scope because its scope only begins from the last from this point to this point. You can have function and you can have other scopes. If you go outside all those scopes, whatever you see, that is a global scope. So a global scope can contain variables, it can contain functions called global functions, this is a global variable, this is a global function. You can contain type definition, like in the like in namespace. It can contain object declaration or definitions. All these are called global objects. This can be called as global object, and this is a global structure type, global type. Let me have a small code to make sure that we don't have some syntactic error on this. So I want to have a small code. To display global variable data, global function invocation, and uses of this globally defined object GS. This is my code. I'm going to be switching to terminal to see how does it behave when it comes to compilation, linking, and execution. So we have a problem. I think there is some typo issue. Going back to the code. Hello, this should be hello, and this should be GS. Now it is compiling, right? I have a main.exe. Now it is displaying the data that we expected: 21 hello, and 10 and 22 and 2.22. This is all I wanted to discuss on this topic. Thank you for watching.